Hey everyone, my name is Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game published by Modiphius Entertainment, and I thought I would spend a little bit of time with you right now to show you my virtual tabletop setup that I have for the game in the interests of just showing you about how one way you can do it. There's certainly plenty of different options. There's plenty of virtual tabletops out there, including the one I use, which happens to be Roll20 plus Discord. Quick disclaimer, even though I am the project manager for the game, every piece of content in this video is my opinion only and is not officially endorsed by Modiphius. So while I use Roll20 and Discord, those are not necessarily officially endorsed by Modiphius. I'm sure they like the systems, but don't take this as gospel that Modiphius is endorsing this as such. I'm coming to you tonight as a game master and a fan of the game and of these tabletop virtual tabletop options. So just keep that in mind that I'm not endorsing these officially, other than to say I really like them, and just, keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about Roll20. So Roll20. So here's you get yourself an account. One of the reasons I went with Roll20 over some of the other virtual tabletop options is because Roll20, I could pay for a subscription, but my players didn't have to. So I really appreciated that in terms of the fact that, to get my friends and my gamers to play, they didn't have to outlay anything extra to get onto a platform and to play it. So I liked Roll20 for that. I like the functionality built into Roll20, even though Roll20 has way more functionality in it than I actually need for the way I game master my games. It had enough, and it was simple enough to figure out and to use. So I really appreciated how easy it was for me to get it set up and started and to run with it. I will note that this is not a tutorial on how to use Roll20. This is just me talking to you about how I happen to use it. Maybe you'll see some ideas in here that you can use for your own game, or maybe you'll decide that Roll20 is not right for you. It's not, that my intention isn't to sell you on Roll20 or to teach you how to actually use it. I'm just here to show you how I use it. So as you can see, right now I've got two games set up on Roll20. I've got my campaign, which is Star Trek Galatea. We've been playing it for about 4 months now. And another one that I'm starting to develop and think about in terms of developing some sort of game that I can run for new players to the game, but more information on that once I get it worked out. But right now I've built a space and I'm starting to play with it. So for the purposes of this, conversation, such as it is, I'm going to focus on Star Trek Galatea. I will say that Roll20 has a very simple but effective forum built into it where you can post commentary about your game with your players, and I use that to post my episode synopses. So every session, I record every session on audio, and then I play them back during the week and write down notes about what happened in that session, and then I post those notes to the forum here on Roll20 so that my players can refresh their memory about what they've been doing, what they did in the last session, so that when they come into the next session, they're pretty fresh and they've got all that backstory back in their mind, so that we can hit the ground running pretty much when we get started on our game. So I do appreciate Roll20 being able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the game. And while this is loading and launching, I'll say that I did get approval from all my players to show you this. There's no personal information in here that I have to worry about showing or not showing, so they're going to, they gave me the clearance to show all this off. And of course, it should be no surprise here. All these pictures, all the stuff in here, I don't claim any copyright to any of this stuff. It's all pulled right off the internet. So the internet being the haven for copyright violations galore, right? I have to admit I'm participating in that to some degree, where I'm just pulling these pictures without attribution or use or anything. But for the purposes of the game, we're just using this as a visual representation. Obviously, we're not paying anybody for it. We're not making any money off of it. We're just doing it for the love. Anyway, all that being said, so Roll20, your pages that you can show your players and that you can present for the game. These are canvases, gridded canvases that you can make pretty much any size you want within reason here. You can see this is a very large canvas that I've put a lot of pictures onto, and my group and I have put a lot of pictures onto. You can see that we have a graphic of a Luna-class bridge. Our ship is, of course, the USS Galatea, Luna-class based on the novels, the Titan novel series. Like Riker's ship was the USS Titan. I found this great graphic of the bridge, and what we've done is we've taken little pictures, dragged them right into Roll20 from our desktop or whatever, and I've sized each one here to fit on the bridge at the appropriate stations. And we've also blown them up a little bit so you can kind of see them over here on the right. And we've also made use of the wonderful Star Trek character generator that's available for free online to create visual representations of our characters. And boy, I'll tell you, I tend to run my games mostly theater of the mind, and having these little picture representations of each of the characters, plus the actors that we've chosen to cast as each of those characters, it's amazing how effective that is at helping me anyway. I can't speak for my players, but for helping me visualize what these characters look like. There are times during the sessions that I can literally close my eyes, and with these visualizations in my mind, in my head, and in my line of sight, I can listen to them role playing, and I can just visualize these characters doing the stuff that we're talking through. So for me anyway, it really helps to have this visual representation of the crew available. You can see that they're in the TNG movie uniforms. The game is set in 2379, so right at the end of Nemesis. We had these uniforms. We haven't switched over to the lower deck style. I think canonically we're still trying to figure out where that actually happens. But for now, we went with the gray and black, DS9, Next Gen, First Contact, Nemesis kind of uniforms. You can see our actors here. So, in addition on this canvas, I've added some rules stuff. This is all pulled right out of the Klingon book. I've just taken screen caps from the Klingon book, uses for determination, threat spends, momentum spends. These are all just player aids if they want to look at it stuff quickly. I had a piece of artwork for the ship commissioned, and I've got that here. I've got a little text box over it that I'll put the title card for each episode. We're still in the middle of episode, well, we're near the end of episode 1, the Rose Compact. We've got one more session to go, I think. And then I dropped in the momentum and threat tokens over here. This is just a graphic here. This is actually, this is the advantage of being the project manager for the game. This is actually the screen cap of the momentum and threat tokens that we had in the starter set. I pulled that out of the Modiphius archives, dropped it in here, and then these two numbers here, these are just text boxes dropped on top and recolored to match. And as I gain threat, or as the players gain or spend momentum, I change these values as appropriate, so that the players always have at a glance they can see where they are with momentum and threat. As you can see, as of the end of the last session, I'm still holding on to 5 threat here. I carry that over from session to session, and work it as accordingly. So from the beginning of this first episode, I started with 2 per. So I started with 8, and it's come and gone over the course of the adventure, and I'm currently at 5, and I'm absolutely saving that for the epic finale here that'll happen in a couple of weeks. So these pages, you can have as many pages as you want, I think. I only use a couple right now, and by clicking on this little blue page toolbar, you can create new pages, you can move pages around, you can, the little player ribbon is what the players can actually see on their screens, because of course all the players would sign into this, and you'd see more names down here besides just my own. But I can actually physically move them over from one page to another. Or I can just look at them on my own, like this page. I'm looking at this page. This is a picture of our lounge on the ship. This is a picture of the station that they're currently at, and these are a whole bunch of little adversary ships that are docked at that station. I kind of cut and pasted and threw them all in here. This down here is just a visual representation that it's this station, but it looks more like the Nostromo, kind of older, worn down, etc. So this is just a visual representation of what they're looking at. And then we also have a kind of a catch-all page that has some sort of graphics on it that didn't fit on the main display. This is some characters I've created for NPCs that are in this episode. At one point they were all wearing full formal dress uniforms for a formal First Contact dinner. Got a key NPC over here and his vessel. Other bits and pieces here. So at the end of this episode, I'll probably clear a lot of this out just so that we can go on to other things. But if I wanted to have my players look at something different, like one of these other pages, I would simply click on this view and literally drag this player ribbon to another page, and that would change their display to whatever I selected, right? So that is that as far as the display goes. Like, again, really simple to resize these. I mean, literally you click on page and you go to the options on each page to change the canvas. Like, I could change this canvas pixel wise to whatever I want. There's a lot of other functionality here that I don't bother with in terms of dynamic lighting, or you can add like a fog of war. Like if you're running a dungeon delve, you can hide sections of it. From my understanding, you can hide sections of it, and then as the players, as the characters are roaming that dungeon or whatever, you can reveal sections of it. So it's like kind of that map as you go idea. But for the purposes of my game, I don't bother with any of that. Again, mostly theater of the mind here. So I leave it here and let them run wild. Over here on the far right is a chat window, and this chat window has a lot of our conversation over the course of the game. Of course, we use Discord for the audio channel, so we're mostly doing this over audio. But we also occasionally drop in some text material here. You can see that you can. There's a dice roller here, and you can actually write commentary, and you can also use a macro called M. You can do \M, and you can do these kind of like descriptive bits here that kind of change the flow a little bit, and that you can use it as a storytelling tool. For instance, right here, I mean, it's not going to make any sense to you by looking at it, but in this moment of the last session, one of the players in my group, Lieutenant Rana, our chief engineer, she was having a very awesome conversation with an NPC named Alice, and while she was explaining the Federation's philosophy toward the rights of sentient beings, and Alice was not understanding that, I was in rapt attention listening to her roleplay, and while I was doing that, I was like, well, if this was a TV episode, that other character, that NPC, would be reacting to what she was saying, and I didn't want to break her flow of role-playing to interject what they were seeing, right? So I took advantage of this text window to say, oh, while you're talking, Alice's perpetual grin starts to fade, and then there was another alien in a life pod nearby, and they had been struggling against their bonds, and then they stopped struggling, and then we're staring right at Rana. So I wanted to kind of bring in that directorial flavor so that the other players would kind of pick up of like what's happening in the scene while this character is having this fantastic speech, and I didn't want to interrupt the moment to say, oh, and by the way, while you're saying that, Ellis does this or Real Loomis does that, because that just throws the moment off, and I didn't want to take that player out of the moment because they were doing such a great job with it. I was having so much fun listening to it. So this is one possible tool, depending on the way you GM and the way your players play, that might be a way for you to kind of add more texture to your scenes without you as the GM necessarily interrupting things. So just something to think about there. So you got that's the chat window. You've got picture archive. You can drop all kinds of pictures in here to save them as needed. These are saved to your Roll20 account and are left here exactly as you leave them, unless you go in here and you choose to start deleting them. Roll20 maintains that archive of stuff. Let's see, you've got character sheets. There's a ship sheet built into here, so that, for instance, this is the Galatea, and you can see this. I can add some information here, some bio information. There's actually a full character sheet in here. I'm going to expand this out just a little bit, and if you're familiar with the game, this will be very clear to you. And to switch this from one to the other, you simply click on this little gear icon. Where is it? Oh, is that it? No, there's a way to switch between character sheets and ship sheets. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but and again, I don't want to go into too far in the weeds to do a tutorial here, but suffice to say that you can have ship sheets in Roll20 as well as character sheets. This is the ship sheet. As you can see, it's got the systems over here. You put in the values as appropriate. You got the departments, talents, you just type them in. You got the weapons, etc., etc. And what you can do actually, let me show you the character sheet because it's pretty straightforward here. Let me grab one of the player characters. I don't think Derek would mind me showing you Amir. So Amir is the first officer. He is half Andorian, half Vulcan. I think he favors the Vulcan side a little bit, but don't quote me on that. We're still working that out because we're still in the first episode, and we're still discovering a lot more about him. So here's a character sheet, pretty straightforward Modiphius character sheet. But the great thing about Roll20 is it has a dice roller built into it, into this character sheet. So you can see where he's got his values here, he's got his talents, he's got his focuses. Focuses, there's actually a couple of duplicates here, so I should probably remind him to clear those off. But basically, to roll a task, I'll switch over here to the chat window so you can see it. Let's say I need him to make a reason plus science task. Maybe he's attempting reason plus science. So you can simply click on these different attributes and disciplines. So let's say he's going to pick reason and science, and let's say he's got a focus that's relevant. You can click yes or no on whether you have a focus or not. Complication range, I would tell him, complication range is 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it might be. And then the task roll, that's the number of dice he's going to be rolling. Normally you default to 2. In his case, he can spend momentum or add to threat to buy more dice if needed. So let's say for the purposes of this task, let's say he's attempting a difficulty 1 task, and he chooses not to roll any dice, or he chooses not to buy any dice, additional dice, right? So he's simply going to roll 2d20 using a focus, using reason plus science. So reason plus science, so he's looking at, he's got a 13 with a focus, and then he's going to roll. So he clicks on the task roll button right there, and in the chat window, you see that he's got 1 success and a complication. The little red 0 means that he rolled a complication, so that would be the equivalent of rolling a 20 on a d20. But for the purposes of this dice roller, it doesn't matter exactly what you roll, whether you roll a 17 or a 6 or a 4 or a 20 or whatever. All you're looking for is number of successes. So you can see that he rolled 1 success, so he was successful at his attempting his task, but he did roll a complication, and that complication is something that I, as a GM, can do something with. I can bank it for threat, or I can use it right away, or I can do something something else related to the game that you can do with complications. So that's pretty straightforward as far as the dice roller. If I had an NPC who was assisting him, I would probably just roll 1 die and then hit the button on their character sheet, and that would come up as a whatever. But also the ship can assist on rolls too, right? If you understand the rules. So if I'm in here with the ship, maybe the ship is assisting with sensors and science. Dice of 1. No focuses, of course, for ships. And then I would say, so you were successful, and the ship adds 2 more successes. So guess what? Derek, you just got 2 extra points of momentum that he could then choose to use to obtain information, or simply choose to bank it into the group momentum pool, which I would then modify this this little counter over here on the bottom left for their momentum, just to allow them to track that if needed. So dice roller, character sheets, ship sheet, that's all pretty straightforward. Dice roller, really awesome to have it in here. It's super useful. It's been really, really handy to have it in there. Quick and easy for us to see results. It's also great because as a game master, I don't really like to fudge rolls. I don't like to hide my rolls. I like them to be out in the open and just let them fall where they may. And yeah, so this is a great way for them to really, for the players to really see what's happening, as far as transparency goes. So that's useful there. You can pause for a moment, think about what else I can show you here. So one nice thing I like about Roll20 is that there's actually a jukebox audio kind of component to it. And if you look at this, you can actually add in MP3, MP4 files. You can add audio files to this, and you can group it into playlists, right? So I've got 3 playlists here. I've got sound effects, ambient tracks, and credits. So I'll try to pump up my volume a little bit to see if you can hear these. So of course, during most sessions, I like to have the engine ambiance on, and I like to have the bridge ambiance on, especially when I'm on the bridge. And you would not believe how useful this is at adding a certain level of ambiance to the game. Just having these 2 pieces of things on in the background while we're role playing it's amazing because it really feels like you're on, like, the Enterprise, Next Gen, or original series or whatever. It's like that constant background noise is so it's so comforting in a weird way. It really adds that Star Trek feel to our sessions because we got that sound there. Let me turn this off just for the sake of turning them off. I've also got opening title music. Of course, every Star Trek series has to have some sort of opening music. So I've got my opening music here, and then I've also got closing credit music that I play at the end of the episodes. And then I've also got a playlist for sound effects. And again, all these files I pulled off the internet, off of TrekCore.com. TrekCore.com audio is fantastic, and they have a gigantic library of sound effects here. And I've barely even really scratched the surface of some of these that could be used in here, because I want to have some of them in the game, but I don't want to be spending so much time doing sound effects that I'm missing the actual role playing. So I've got a couple obvious ones here, like a comm chirp. That gets a lot of use. Door chime. Player characters are always going to other people's quarters to talk to them about things. Tricorder is popular. They're always scanning something. You can put these on loops if you want to, or you can just do a one-time play. Replicator, red alert, transporter, and then the ship entering and exiting warp. These are all pretty straightforward, standard sound effects that we use a lot. I may add a few more to the game at some point, but it hasn't really been a priority because I've got enough to give the feel for an episode in here, but without having to go too far down into the weeds. So there's that. So sound effects. There are a whole bunch of opportunities to add in more macros to the game, but I haven't messed with any of this stuff because I just don't care and I don't have time to really mess with it. I'm sure there's some really awesome macros I could make that would make this game experience even better. But I mean, for now, the way we run the game, the way we roleplay, it's again really role-playing intensive. We just haven't had a need to add more to it. There's even some settings here that you can play with and mess with the settings. A lot of experimental features, chat avatars, token colors, etc. that we just don't really use much. But I'd say for my dollar, the things I'm using Roll20 the most and getting the most out of is the canvas that I can put pictures on. Of course, this whole thing right here, having the crew fully visible in uniform and able to be visualized is an incredible godsend for me as a game master and for them as players to see everybody's faces and try to visualize what does everybody look like, because we don't use video, right? We don't bother with putting video up, and I know that there's plenty of people who use various virtual tabletops or Twitch or Tabletop Simulator, etc., that have the squares with each person's video on, and they're in uniform, and they got the LCARS layout and all this amazing stuff that is way beyond me because I don't have the time to put that kind of polish onto it. And we also have no intention of letting this out into the world, right? We're not going to invite thousands of people to watch our YouTube feed of our game, because why would we do that? That's just us, right? There's plenty of other people who are doing that and finding success doing it, and more power to you for having those kind of setups. But for my group and for the way I GM, we are going relatively low tech, even though this may seem overwhelming to you. I don't know. When I was new to Roll20 4 months ago, all of this was oh my gosh, how am I going to figure any of this out? I just want to play with my friends online and make it work. I was thinking about, do we do a text-only forum, or do we do something else? But this works pretty well for what I need it to be. It doesn't beat being across the table from your friends, eating snacks and joking and getting the really good nonverbal cues that you can see each other and you can see the faces and the body language and that kind of stuff. But there are certain advantages to this too, and I think having that chat window on the side really helps in a lot of ways, because you can send messages to each other, you can have that kind of running commentary going, and like I said with that last session, I've been able to start adding in a little bit of color to scenes using this kind of this macro to kind of create commentary as we're going, to say, while you're talking through the scene, something else is happening in the meantime. And this is great when two player characters are on the bridge talking to each other, imparting information back and forth or having a good scene. I can kind of drop in a little something about, hey, what are these other officers on the bridge doing? How are they reacting to what's being said or what's being done or whatever. So yeah, as a GM, it's a nice tool, and it's not something I could really do effectively in person, because when we play in person, we don't really use devices at the table. We're mostly just, we're rolling physical dice, and we're bantering back and forth and role playing at the table, and we don't have the ability to text each other or to send messages to each other like we have here. So it's a very different experience. I think there's pros and cons to both, but the world being what it is right now, I think this is our best option, and it's working for us really, really well. We've had 11 fantastic sessions, some 30 something hours in game of role playing, and just loving the experience. So this is probably a long-winded way of showing you Roll20 and how I'm using it. Again, emphasis is that this is not perfect by any means. It is not taking the full advantage of the platform. It's probably pretty low tech compared to a lot of the stuff that you'll see out there. But it took me a couple weeks to get familiar enough with the system that I was able to confidently drag and drop these pictures in, and to figure out how to work it and how to work the character sheets and the sidebars. And you'll even see that the character sheets, I'm way behind on plugging in a lot of the NPCs. We have a lot of NPCs. Most of them are a little better than supporting characters, but I am diligently working on starting to build in some of their character sheets here at some point. In fact, I think I got the Doctor in here. Yeah, the Doctor and a couple others, the EMH, of course. And gradually I'll build them out as the game goes on. But I got the player characters are in here. I got the ship in here. Those are the really critical ones, of course. Minimize that. So yeah, let me go ahead and exit. So that is Roll20. Again, a reminder, if you're looking for audio files, check out trekcore.com audio. Check out Roll20. It wasn't that expensive to join on to the subscription. I think I got the Plus account, so it was a pretty sweet deal, and it gave me access to the character sheet and to some other content as needed. Seems to be a good group, well supported, well maintained, at least in my opinion. I'm sure you may feel otherwise if you've been using Roll20 longer than I have. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to really share with you, just to give you a sense of what my setup looks like. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or find me on the Star Trek Adventures forums on Facebook, or Modiphius' website itself. And I thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you live long and prosper, and have fun with the game. Take care.